Have you ever had your own property destroyed right in front of your eyes by the very people who were supposed to protect the neighborhood? What would you do if the ones enforcing the rules decided they were above them? Before we dive into this unbelievable story of power, corruption, and karma, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping real-life stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss this one. Now, let's get into it. I woke up to the eerie sound of crackling flames. At first, my groggy mind struggled to process it. Maybe it was just a neighbor's late-night fire pit or the distant sizzle of a barbecue. But as I inhaled, the thick, acrid scent of burning rubber and metal filled my nostrils, seizing my lungs with a harsh, suffocating grip. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I yanked off my sheets and stumbled toward the window. The sight outside sent a jolt of ice-cold fear down my spine. Through the billowing smoke and flickering orange glow, I saw it. My motorcycle, my police-issued, state-owned vehicle, completely consumed by roaring flames. The acrid scent of burning rubber and scorched metal choked the air, making my eyes water and my lungs tighten. The distant wail of sirens cut through the night, but they were too far, too late. The heat radiated off the pavement, warping the air around it, while embers drifted upward like fireflies in the darkness. The crackling of the flames was punctuated by small pops, bits of plastic and metal giving way to the inferno. My stomach twisted into a knot. This wasn't just a random accident. Someone had done this on purpose. The inferno twisted and curled around its frame, swallowing a hole in a grotesque dance of destruction. The fire licked at the pavement, casting long, ominous shadows across my driveway. My stomach twisted into a knot. This wasn't just a random accident. Someone had done this on purpose. My first instinct was to grab the fire extinguisher, to do something, anything to stop the blaze, but my rational mind already knew it was futile. The flames had already won. The metal groaned and warped under the intense heat, and small explosions popped as parts of the bike collapsed. I could feel the searing warmth even from my front door, my skin prickling as I stood helplessly, watching the destruction unfold. Then, just as my shock was turning into a sickening sense of loss, an eerie silence settled over the street. For a brief moment, all I could hear was the distant crackling of the flames and the occasional pop of something melting and collapsing in the fire. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. Then, piercing through the quiet like a cruel dagger, I heard it. Laughter. I turned sharply, my fists tightening at my sides. Across the street, bathed in the soft glow of porch lights, stood a group of people. Their figures were shadowed against the carefully trimmed hedges of a perfectly manicured lawn. In their hands, wine glasses gleamed under the moonlight. One of them, a short man with a round face, raised his glass in what looked like a silent toast. They clinked their glasses together, murmuring amongst themselves, their smiles smug and satisfied. My jaw clenched as I recognized them. The HOA board. At the center of the group stood Caroline Whitman, the ever-so-smug president of the HOA, her pearl necklace catching the light as she leaned in, whispering something to the others before turning her eyes toward me. A slow smirk spread across her face, and with deliberate amusement, she called out across the street, "Next time, follow the rules, Mr. Carter." Her voice was smooth, syrupy with condescension, each word laced with arrogance. The others chuckled under their breath, exchanging knowing glances, as if they had just won some petty war. For a long moment, I was frozen, not out of fear, not out of shock, but because I was trying to wrap my head around just how far these people had gone. I had faced criminals, reckless drivers, violent offenders, even the occasional drug dealer with nothing to lose. But I had never seen suburban homeowners commit an outright felony over something this trivial. The embers of my ruined bike flickered angrily in the dark, glowing red against the pavement. I could still hear the hiss of burning rubber, the crackle of melting plastic. It was a deliberate act of destruction, one with a clear message: submit or suffer the consequences. 2 days earlier, these same people had shown up at my doorstep with a welcome letter. Except it wasn't a welcome letter at all. It was a carefully worded ultimatum the kind of overreach that has made HOAs infamous across the country. While many HOAs function reasonably, some become small-scale dictatorships, enforcing absurd rules and levying steep fines on homeowners who refuse to comply. Unfortunately for me, my neighborhood's HOA fell into the latter category. The HOA, or as I had come to call them, the neighborhood mafia, had made it abundantly clear that joining was not optional. Their reasoning? Control. They wanted to dictate where I could park, what color I could paint my door, how long I could let my grass grow. They wanted compliance, obedience. And when I had politely declined, brushing off their petty rules as nothing more than an inconvenience, I had unknowingly declared war. First, they hit me with fines. A warning about my lawn being half an inch too long. A citation for my motorcycle being an unsightly vehicle that needed to be stored out of view. A $500 fine, which I had laughed at before tossing into the trash where it belonged. Apparently, they hadn't taken my rejection well. And now, my bike was nothing more than a pile of scorched metal and melted plastic. The acrid scent of gasoline still lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of just how far these people were willing to go. I took a slow, deep breath, forcing my pulse to steady. I could feel my rage simmering just beneath the surface, hot and vengeful. But even in my anger, I knew one thing for certain. These people had made a grave mistake. Because what they didn't know was that I wasn't just some low-ranking officer. I wasn't just a beat cop they could push around. I was a state trooper, a veteran of high-speed pursuits, armed standoffs, and takedowns of criminals who thought they were untouchable. I had faced cartel members running drugs across state lines, pulled bodies from wrecked vehicles on highways, and wrestled fugitives to the ground in the dead of night. And now, these suburban overlords thought they could intimidate me with petty fines and arson? They had no idea what kind of storm they had just unleashed. And they had just committed a federal-level crime. Minutes later, the fire department arrived, sirens blaring. My driveway became a chaotic mess of flashing lights and firefighters battling the blaze. The smell of burnt rubber and scorched metal filled the air. I stood there, arms crossed, watching as my bike, the very machine I used to chase down criminals, respond to emergencies, and serve my community, was reduced to twisted, blackened scrap. One of the firefighters, a guy I knew from town, walked over and let out a low whistle. "Damn, Ryan, what the hell happened?" I exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of my neck. HOA happened. His brows shot up. "You serious?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Later that night, I sat in my living room, the glow from my laptop casting eerie shadows across the room. My fingers drummed against the table. My jaw clenched as I watched the grainy black and white video play out on the screen. The HOA board, yes, the entire damn board, had snuck onto my property under the cover of darkness. Their movements were deliberate, calculated, as if they had done this before. A balding man in a sweater vest carried a large gas canister, his hands steady as he unscrewed the cap. He poured the liquid over my motorcycle, dousing it completely, pausing only to ensure the gasoline seeped into every crevice of the machine. Beside him, a woman I instantly recognized, Caroline Whitman's right-hand lackey, flicked open a lighter. The tiny flame illuminated their faces for a fraction of a second before she let it fall. The fire ignited instantly, the flames surging high, devouring the bike in a matter of seconds. Instead of panic or second thoughts, they stood back, watching, laughing. The others exchanged congratulatory nods, some even clinking their wine glasses together in some twisted toast. The firelight cast grotesque shadows over their faces, turning them into something almost inhuman. I rewound the footage, watching it again and again. Each time, my stomach twisted tighter with rage. There it was, undeniable proof. They had committed felony arson against a state-owned law enforcement vehicle, no less. And the best part? They had absolutely no idea who they were messing with. Sure, they knew I was a cop. They might have assumed I was just some low-ranking beat officer, an easy target for their petty power plays. But they didn't know I was a state trooper. They didn't know I had authority beyond their little suburban dictatorship. They didn't know that in their arrogance, they had just escalated their neighborhood power trip into a full-blown federal crime. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk creeping onto my face. Oh, they had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I stood outside, arms crossed, watching as the HOA board gathered for their usual morning gossip session. The neighborhood was waking up around us, with the early morning sun casting long golden rays across manicured lawns and pristine driveways. Birds chirped in the distance, a stark contrast to the tension crackling in the air. Caroline, dressed in her ever-present pearl necklace and crisp power suit, strutted confidently to the gathering, like a politician preparing for a rally. She paused, casting a long, triumphant glance in my direction before speaking. "Such a shame about your motorcycle," she called out, her voice thick with artificial sympathy, every syllable practically dripping with smug satisfaction. "Perhaps next time, you'll reconsider our community guidelines." The group tittered around her, a few exchanging glances, as if they had won some unspoken battle. I could see it in their eyes, the certainty that they had put me in my place, that I had learned my lesson. I smiled, a slow, deliberate, wolfish grin, allowing a few moments of silence to stretch between us, letting the tension build. "Oh, I definitely will," I replied, my voice casual, almost amused. "In fact, I'd love to discuss it with all of you. Maybe over at the police station." The effect was immediate. The group that had moments before been basking in their so-called victory suddenly fell silent. Caroline's confident smirk wavered, her eyebrows drawing together slightly. "The station," she repeated, her voice less steady now, confusion flickering in her eyes. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my badge, flipping it open just enough for the sunlight to catch the metallic glint. It was subtle, but it was enough. Enough to send a ripple of panic through the group, enough to make Caroline's smile freeze on her face. The color drained from her cheeks so quickly I thought she might actually faint on the spot. The others were shifting uncomfortably, their bravado evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Some of them had been holding coffee cups, but now their hands trembled, the liquid inside rippling slightly with their unease. "Yeah," I continued, my tone light, but edged with undeniable authority. "Seeing as how you and your little gang committed arson against state property, I figure we should have a proper chat. Maybe with a few of my colleagues, the ones who arrest people for felonies." Caroline took a sharp step back, nearly stumbling over her own designer heels. The HOA members were frozen, their faces a mix of pale horror and realization. It was one thing to hand out fines and flex their power over homeowners. It was another to find out they had crossed a line that could put them behind bars. I let out a slow chuckle, watching the dawning horror settle into their expressions. "See you soon, folks." And with that, I turned, leaving them to their silence, their fear, and the knowledge that their little empire was about to come crashing down. By the end of the day, the arrests were made. Handcuffs clicked. Board members were escorted to waiting squad cars, some crying, some screaming, others standing in stunned silence as the reality of their downfall sank in. The once smug expressions of the HOA board were now replaced with fear and humiliation. The courtroom was packed, the entire town buzzing with anticipation as the case unfolded. The judge didn't go easy on them. As he read the verdict, a heavy silence filled the courtroom, broken only by the occasional nervous shuffling of papers. Caroline Whitman, who had sat with perfect posture throughout the trial, finally cracked. Her face paled, her confident demeanor crumbling as the words "guilty on all counts" echoed through the chamber. Her fingers clutched the edge of the defense table, knuckles turning white as she tried to process what had just happened. Around her, other board members gasped, some covering their mouths in shock, others visibly trembling. One man let out a small, strangled noise, half protest, half disbelief. But there was no escaping it. The law had caught up to them. The footage played in court was damning. The gas being poured, the match being lit, the cruel laughter that followed. The prosecution left no room for doubt, methodically breaking down every element of their crime. The charges were serious: felony arson, destruction of government property, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, expert testimony, and even some of the HOA members turning on each other in a desperate attempt to reduce their sentences. The defense scrambled, trying to argue that it was just an overzealous attempt to enforce community standards, but the judge wasn't buying it. The law was clear, and there was no excusing the deliberate act of setting fire to a state-owned law enforcement vehicle. The defense tried to paint it as a community enforcement misunderstanding, but the judge wasn't buying it. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts. Some of them got hefty fines and probation. Others, like Caroline Whitman and her closest accomplices, received actual jail time. As the bailiffs led them away in cuffs, I couldn't help but notice the sheer disbelief on their faces. For so long, they had wielded their authority unchecked, treating homeowners like subjects in their tiny kingdom. But now they were just criminals. With most of the HOA board behind bars, the association collapsed. The community wasted no time voting to dissolve it entirely. People cheered as the last remnants of the HOA's rule were dismantled. Ridiculous fines, arbitrary restrictions, all gone in an instant. In its place, we built something better, a community park. Not just any park, but a space where people could gather without fear of citations over fence height or mailbox style. The land where the HOA's office once stood was repurposed, the old enforcement center bulldozed to make room for a barbecue pit, picnic tables, and a playground. The transformation was poetic. The first event we held there? A massive community cookout, complete with backyard games, a potluck table overflowing with homemade dishes, and a sizzling grill station where neighbors took turns flipping burgers and hot dogs. As the festivities continued, I noticed an unexpected guest standing near the lemonade stand, Mr. Thompson, one of the former HOA board members. He hesitated, shifting uncomfortably before finally approaching me. "I have to admit," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "I went along with things for too long. I thought we were just keeping order, but I never realized how far it had gone. I was wrong." I studied his face, seeing something I hadn't before, genuine regret. I handed him a plate of food and nodded. "Well, now you know. Enjoy the barbecue, Thompson." He gave a small, grateful nod before walking off, blending into the crowd of neighbors who had finally reclaimed their freedom. Kids played cornhole and tag, while adults gathered around with plates full of barbecue ribs, coleslaw, and potato salad. Someone even set up a lemonade stand, while another neighbor brought out an old jukebox, filling the air with classic rock and country tunes. It wasn't just a cookout, it was a celebration of newfound freedom, a return to the kind of neighborhood where people could actually enjoy their lives without the fear of petty fines and overbearing rules. Someone even set off fireworks, something that would have earned them a hefty fine just a week earlier. Families brought homemade dishes. Kids ran freely without worrying about stepping on someone's decorative lawn edging. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood actually felt like a community. As I flipped a burger at the grill station, one of the officers who had helped with the arrests, Martinez, walked up, laughing as he read the bold sign I had hung above the food station. "The anti-HOA cookout? You seriously named it that?" "Damn right I did," I said, handing him a plate. "Gotta make sure no one ever forgets what happened here." The night was filled with laughter and camaraderie, a stark contrast to the fear and tension that had once gripped the neighborhood. As I watched my neighbors enjoying their newfound freedom, kids playing without a care in the world, I realized something profound. I hadn't just won. I had taken a stand against unchecked power, proving that no one, not even the self-important tyrants of an HOA, was above the law. We all had, and damn, did victory taste good. Lessons learned from this story. This story teaches us the importance of standing up against abuse of power. Whether it's a corrupt HOA, an unfair workplace, or any authority that oversteps its bounds, letting bullies run unchecked only allows them to grow bolder. The protagonist didn't back down, and because of that, justice was served. It's a reminder that no one is above the law, not even those who think they control the rules. The meaningful message behind the story. At its core, this is a story about justice, resilience, and the power of community. It highlights how people in positions of authority can misuse their power, but also how the right person, with the courage to push back, can restore balance. It's also a celebration of people coming together to reclaim their freedom, because real communities are built on respect, not fear. Personal takeaway. To me, this story is a powerful example of what happens when people refuse to be intimidated. It's satisfying to see those who abuse their influence face the consequences of their actions. But more than that, it's about the triumph of fairness over corruption. It's a lesson that we all have a voice, and when used correctly, it can change everything. If you love gripping stories of justice, karma, and real-life lessons, make sure to subscribe to Story Precious and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. Your support keeps these incredible stories coming, and trust me, there are plenty more unforgettable tales on the way. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who would love this story.